from Marietta, Georgia, 27 years old. I'm currently single. Grew up in a Christian household, but it never really interested me. I was depressed. Drugs, alcohol, and sexual immorality. I remember getting invited. What did I get into? Inexplicable peace. You're not worrying about every single second of every day because you know God's got you. It's something special.
Why should single men listening go show up to a church?
I would say the biggest thing that has changed has been...
What is it that you as a single Christian man is looking for? What are your thoughts on using dating apps as a Christian?
The word dating is not mentioned in the Bible. I think there's a true need for this. Single guys or even guys in relationships just talking about singleness and how to find God through it. I think there's such a power in that because when I was seeking to find what was missing in my life, it ended up being God. But if I would have had something like this, then I think it would have changed a lot of different things.
Challenge yourself constantly. You have to be a little bit patient.
I felt like I was in a hole looking up.
The whole idea is you have to become content in singleness.
I'd be lying if I said I haven't fired off some Instagram DMs.
The word dating is not mentioned in the Bible.
I dedicated my life at Tomorrow World to Jesus.
Welcome to the Single Man Podcast, where we delve into candid conversations with Christian men about their journey to faith, advice for their younger selves, and navigating dating. With a heart to reach men from all walks of life, dive into real stories of redemption, growth, and the hope found in following Jesus. I'm your host, Carlton French, a 29-year-old single Christian, and I'm excited for you to listen to this week's episode. Let's jump into it. Hey, it's Carlton French. Welcome to this week's episode of the Single Man Podcast. I'm joined with my good friend Ryan Uffner tonight. Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to be here. Super expectant for what God is gonna provide through us, and I'm just excited.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming. I will give a little backstory on our relationship. So Ryan and I have been good friends for 2.5 years now. We met through our men's Bible study at Passion City Church here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we both joined about the same time, which is funny. I started going in May of 2021, and you started coming in July of 2021.
Yep.
And similar backgrounds where I was like really skeptical when I first started coming, and so excited to hear more of your story behind your journey coming and kind of what led you to even be invited. And I'm sure it's going to encourage single men out there. And we'd love for you to give a little bit of kind of background and introduction on yourself, Ryan, for all the people listening, like how old you are and where you're from, what you do for work, things like that.
Yeah, so from Marietta, Georgia, born and raised, grew up there my entire life. I have been in the same house for 26 years. I guess it's not all my life, but lived at a different house for a year. I clearly don't remember when I was a year. 27 years old. I am an account manager for a company called Dash Solutions. Long story short, we are the technology behind payment processing. Do a lot of different stuff, but love it. Been in financial technology, or a lot of people call it fintech, for almost 5 years now. Wow, that's crazy. But yeah, I've been in fintech for like 5 years now, after I have a degree in sports management that I'm not using at all. But yeah, it's kind of the gist of myself. I've been, like Carlton mentioned, going to the same Bible study for like 2.5 years now, which is crazy because it seriously feels like I've known you for like 10 years.
Yeah, right.
Which is awesome. We just got like a great relationship. But yeah, that's pretty much it about me.
Yeah, man. And your like hobbies and relationship status currently?
I'm currently single.
Okay.
Hobbies, I serve and lead 7th grade students at Passion City, Cumberland. Been with them for a year and a half now, which is so awesome. We have the best co-leaders, and shout out Jonathan Cheeseman, Mike Joseph, and Tayo Agbalaya.
Yeah.
And I've been leading them for like a year and a half, and God has just blown my mind through leading them. Show me new things. They teach me things every day, and it's so awesome. I love leading them.
Yeah.
Some other hobbies, like to play sports when I'm not getting injured. Have 2 torn ACLs in my career. So I'm retired from football. I did both of them in football, so retired.
That's wise. Yep.
Play some basketball, pick up basketball. I have to take it easy. And big golfer. I'm very excited for the summer to be able to golf more and more.
Yeah.
So.
Love that, man. And then what's been your favorite and least favorite part of this last week?
My favorite part of the week is being on this podcast with Carlton. I'm so excited. He's been talking about it for a while, and I think there's a true need for this when, just a bunch of single guys or even guys in relationships just talking about singleness and how to find God through it. I think there's such a power in that, because when I was seeking, to find what was missing in my life, it ended up being God. But if I would have had something like this, then I think it would have changed a lot of different things. And then least favorite part of the week, probably just, it's work right now. It's just a super slow season. Our busy season's like the summer and like the holidays, and it's not the holidays.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's it.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, let's jump into things. Would love for the audience to learn more about your background, like how you grew up, and then how you started coming to our group, how you ultimately came to know the Lord.
Yeah. So I'll start at the beginning. Grew up in a Christian household. Parents are big believers, and always went to church growing up. Sat in a Methodist church and the big congregation with the organs and the whole shebang.
Oh, wow.
But it never really interested me. Even through like middle school, high school, I started going to like our youth groups, and the leaders were great. But it was like, knowing what I know now, I was walking in darkness, was dealing with like trying to chase things of this world, so to speak. But went through middle school, high school, and then got to college, started partying. Big part of my testimony, I like the big three, I would say: drugs, alcohol, and sexual morality. So trying to just find myself and please myself with things of this world. And really I didn't even go to church when I was in college. So graduated in 2018, and then the degree in sports management, like I said, so trying to find a job in sports. So summer 2018, graduated, went on to work at a restaurant for a couple months, trying to find a job in sports, and then landed a job in Chattanooga with the Chattanooga Lookouts there.
Okay.
AA baseball team.
Yeah.
It was great. Living there was awesome. They have so many little hole-in-the-wall restaurants for I was just getting fat. But thankfully, my job was all outside. I was assistant groundskeeper, so I was outside 24/7. I had the worst farmer's tan you'll ever see in your entire life. But yeah, so 2019, lived in Chattanooga until October. Moved back from Chattanooga in October of 19, and then started working in a restaurant again while I was trying to find a job in sports, and did not end up finding anything ever. And then COVID hits, it's like, and I was living at home at the time, and my parents didn't want me working in a restaurant with COVID going on. So, and that was the season where I was like, man, this stinks. And I was depressed at that time. So I had a friend, Nicholas Gualiardo. He actually got to baptize me, which is so cool.
Yeah.
But, so COVID hit, and I had to find basically what I was missing in my life. It's God, like we know it now. When I was showed, I had someone, I did have someone, Nick, pushing me towards that.
Yeah.
So I decided, and I was a little overweight when I got back from Chattanooga too. So I decided right after COVID hit, so I guess that was March of 2020, to better myself spiritually, physically, and mentally. So started reading, started praying, started dieting, started getting on a good workout routine and everything. And that's kind of when my life, that season from March of 2020 through the end of 2020, was just a discovery phase on how to better myself and seek the Lord through it, which was cool. But also in that season, I was able to land a job in fintech, which I started working at a company, and I started as a social media manager, and with zero social media experience. So I had to come up with little graphics and, post and LinkedIn posts and thankfully that did not last long, and I was able to work my way up to like an account manager, which is cool. But that job it definitely like helped me through the whole spiritual thing, because I didn't have to worry about searching for a job during that time, which was super helpful. But yeah, it was like kind of my discovery phase of end of 2020. And then end of 2020, once things started opening up, started attending Passion City Church, which is where I currently go, which was awesome. And then I guess fast forward to like July of 21, been going to Passion for a while, and me, Connor Hogan, and Nicholas Gualiardo were looking for a group, and we came across the group that we're still currently in, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I remember getting invited and showing up, and we were in the courtyard, and Grayson, Wright, and Clayton there, they both had hair past their shoulders. And I was like, what did I get into? You know, I really wasn't getting out of my comfort zone much at that time. But getting out of my comfort zone was what they did, because Clayton would ask you the tough questions. And I think, you know, just trying to, and he kind of pushed it out of you, like the spiritual healing aspect. You know, one of the things we do in our group now is like we have highs and lows. It's like, what sucked about your week and what was good.
Right.
And, you know, you're like, yeah, dude, I, you know, looked at this last night. I did this. I got hammered last night, and having to go into group and like tell those guys, that was tough. But, you know, the healing that comes from like actually saying like what happened is crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of how my faith, a little synopsis of the faith journey leading up to where we are now in our group.
Yeah.
And it's something special.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. I'm curious, so when you first started coming to Passion City Church back in 2020, post-COVID, what was it that even had you think like, oh, maybe I should go check church out? You know, like, was it just your upbringing or your friend reaching out, or why should single men listening be like, okay, well, this worked for Ryan, but I don't even know anything about church. Why should I just go show up to a church?
Well, church is a super important aspect of faith. I guess I kind of got the story wrong. I was watching Passion City Church online during COVID, which was great. And I went to a couple of things, and Passion City Church is a huge church, and it may not be your church. I just encourage you to find a church. And when you do, you know, there's these big churches, but there's a way to make big churches small, which I think what we've done from our Bible study group. You know, I probably wouldn't still be going to Passion, I'd assume, if it wasn't for this Bible study group and like being able to be plugged in, like even in my students community.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways to make big church small even. And then if you go to a small church, you can make it even smaller. You know, you get a couple guys and find a Bible study. But I mean, I would say most of my biblical knowledge is from our Bible study and just digging into the Word each week with guys that are our age and similar walks of life, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
Okay. And then, so you're coming to Passion, you found the group, you get baptized. So what's been different about your life than before you came to church, before you put your faith in Jesus, before you got baptized? Like Ryan now, what's different about him compared to a few years ago?
Yeah, just I guess it's one simple word with a little adjective in front of it. It's inexplicable peace that I think you can only get from the Lord. I always had a ton of anxiety, and yeah, I mean, ton of anxiety, worrying about one thing, worrying about this thing. So, I mean, you sit in worship music and you're getting the gospel, and like just seeing that for me is kind of what changed. And I have this peace, you know, you're not worrying about every single second of every day because you know God's got you.
Okay. So that's something you didn't have before, really? Like this peace? You're always
not
just
at all
worried and anxious?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. That's awesome, man. I'm interested, like, if you could talk to yourself, you know, when you were in college or in Chattanooga and, you know, not taking the best care of yourself and trying to figure out life post-grad, what would you tell younger Ryan now?
I mean, find Jesus earlier, man. That's the answer to everything. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's some things I would have, if even in college, if you're like, hey, Ryan, are you a Christian? I would have been like, yeah. And you can be a Christian, sure, but are you like actively following Jesus and like doing everything in your life to like get closer to him? Because if you're not growing, then you're spiritually dead. So it's like a plant, you know, if it's growing, it's full of life. If it's not, it's dead. So there's, you know, I had 1 foot in the world and 1 foot like trying to chase after Jesus when I was just getting ripped apart and pulled mostly towards the world in that time.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of like your dating life, you said you were single at the beginning. How has that evolved since, you know, you were young and throughout high school, college? Now, as an adult, what does dating look like for you?
Yeah, well, the world tells you a lot of different things than what Scripture tells you, and even when I was discovering my faith, you know, dating was always like in the background of like, oh, how do you date and stuff like this, and it's not in the Bible. The word dating is not mentioned in the Bible, which like I thought was kind of crazy. So I would say the biggest thing that has changed has been it's not as stressful. Because you don't have these expectations. Like before I was a Christian, I'd go on a date and you're like trying to find out every single thing about this person. And then like, you know, into the first date ends, you're like, should I kiss her? Or am I trying to like invite her over and all this kind of stuff? And, you know, now it's like, you know, you ask somebody out, it can be a friend and whatever, and you go on a date and I mean, as blunt as it sounds, it's an interview trying to get another interview, and you're seeing if you like this person and trying to, you know, pursue them towards marriage. So I think that's the biggest thing that's changed. It's definitely way less stressful. Okay.
And then did you like have any relationships before you were a Christian?
Nope, I've never been in a relationship.
Never? Okay. And what do you feel like you're looking for, you know, as someone that is following Jesus now? You know, you're active in Christian community. You're active, you know, growing in your faith. Like, what is it that you as a single Christian man is looking for now?
Well, I'm looking for my wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just looking for someone that, you know, is chasing after God the same pace I am. You know, I think they said it at a Passion City Young Adults event a while ago, and it was great. You know, you're running a race towards God, and someone else is running a race towards God, and eventually you're gonna look to your left or your right or whatever, and that person's gonna be there of like the opposite sex, you know, for you. And you know, that's kind of what I'm doing, is just running after God and knowing God's got me and in the right place. And I haven't been in a relationship for a reason. You know, it's God's plan. So I think just waiting and being patient, because it's definitely stressful with, you know, expectations of the world. Like people are getting married at like 20 and still trying to figure things out. And I mean, I'm still trying to figure things out, but, you know, trying to not set your mind on expectations of the world, of what other people say and what everything against Scripture says, you know?
Yeah. Right. I think your mindset on, you know, just having peace about it and not worrying about, okay, when am I going to meet her, or, oh, is this date going to work out? Going back to that peace that you said you have from following Jesus and having a relationship with God, I feel like that's something that is different for me too in my life, as a single Christian man as well. Just not being so consumed with, when's my next date, or who am I going to ask out, or, you know, where's my wife at? So just kind of being patient through the whole process is something that I've learned as well. So
do you worry at all about?
To be honest, I don't.
Okay.
Not anymore. I used to be very worried about it, you know, like, very like comparison driven. Like, okay, my friends were, getting married or getting engaged, and okay, like I'm not meeting anybody, or, you know, I don't have a significant other. So I used to be very concerned with what other people were doing, and like, okay, I'm behind or am I ahead? Yeah. And now, since following Jesus, and I think having examples of men that are older than me and older than you through like leaders of our group and other guys in our community that have found their wives later in their life or are still single
Yeah.
themselves, it helps you feel more content and
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not like behind or I'm not ahead. I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I think conversations like this and having you come on and share your story will encourage other men out there. Like, okay, this guy Ryan, like he, seems to be a successful guy, good looking guy. He's plugged in with the church, but he's still single. And so there's not like something wrong with me because I'm still single myself.
Yeah.
So that's great, man. I guess like maybe tangibly, if you could give like one or two things you're like specifically looking for, I'd be interested to hear that. Like, okay, she loves Jesus obviously and is like running the same pace as you, but do you have any tips for other guys out there?
Well, I'd say one, you have to have your relationship with the Lord right first. As a single guy, you have to, I think you should be in, some sort of a Bible study, whatever that looks like in your church, your community. And then I think one thing that's helped me through the tough times, you have your Bible study, and then I have a accountability group that try to meet once a week, Friday mornings for breakfast before work. And, it's cool because we have, there's 4 people, including me, and we have guys in every single walks of life, which is really cool. So I've got a friend who's a little older, who's married, as a kid that's a 3-year-old. I've got a friend who's just been married for 2 years. I got me, and then a guy 2 years younger than me. So it's kind of cool to have that dynamic, but that's how my faith has grown exponentially, is by having that accountability group and being like, oh, dude, I'm struggling with this week. Can you give me a call and talk through things, pray for me, stuff like that. So I think that's important. And when looking for a relationship, and I think, one thing I like to see if I'm like looking for a relationship and like someone to ask out is like mutual friends, and like, do they vouch for that person? And I think that's super important for them to vouch for them, because like, oh, you have mutual friends. Like, okay, what does this person look like outside of that? Because when you're going into a date, generally you don't know how they interact and kind of stuff like this. So to ask someone that,
right.
And if they have mutual friends, it's always good. And then I'd say the last thing is it's always great if they're plugged into a church and serving. So that's like kind of answers a question before me, like, where's their heart at? Oh, it's like fully in their church.
Yeah.
So I think that's super important.
Yeah. That's great, man. What are your thoughts on, using dating apps as a Christian?
I don't personally like them.
Okay.
I just think I waste my time on there most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of them are driven through just pictures, and you're just swiping left and right. I haven't been on them in a while, so it could have changed. Who knows? But I'm just personally not a big fan of them.
Yeah. Same. I feel like it's a bit of a game, I guess.
Yeah.
Like that's how it felt to me before I was a Christian. I used to use dating apps, and since becoming a Christian, I haven't used them. But it just felt very like, okay, it's just like a number, not like an actual person that I'm interacting with.
With that point, I think it takes the intentionality out of dating. Like, I mean, when you get on a date, there's ways to be intentional, but there's something different. And especially as the guy, you're supposed to lead in a relationship and lead spiritually and like be the head of the household, like, from scripture. And asking someone out in person brings a whole different type of nerves to you. Yeah. But it also shows like, the girl that you're asking out, like what your intentions are, and like, how you honor God through that.
Have you done that like before you were a Christian? Did you ask girls out in person or since becoming?
Yeah.
You did?
That was stressful, stressful, because you have no idea what they're going to say, and you're not content with a no at that point. And then, post being a Christian, it's like you ask them out and they say no. It's like, all right, that's fine. Totally. Yeah. Thanks for your honesty. Yeah. And you're just being honoring to them.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So great. Would you have like kind of one takeaway, I guess? Let's say, somebody is listening, they're a single man out there, they're not a Christian themselves. Like, okay, why should I listen to what this Ryan guy has to say? Like, what would you want that one takeaway for them to have be from listening to this episode?
Man, I don't know, because you probably shouldn't listen to me. But no, seriously, I think you just dive into the Word, man. Just dive into the Word, and it's cool because in John 1 it says God's Word is it's God's breath on a page, and I never comprehended that until I really sat in and read one verse and just kind of sit in it. And I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, so encouraged by your faithfulness, Ryan, and your story, and your journey to come to know the Lord. And excited to see how God will use this episode to help encourage other single men out there. And I think it's awesome your vulnerability coming on and sharing your story. And excited to see who God has for you out there.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and thanks for having me on. And I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, I think this is super important. I know you did your research, and there's not really kind of like this in the space. And, just guys being able to share their testimony. And, when I got baptized, my prayer was someone to have, be affected through what I've went through and have their life changed. So that's definitely our prayer. That's definitely your prayer. I know for this podcast is to, have someone's life uprooted and have them run after Jesus from it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's telling stories is the best way to do that, right?
Absolutely.
So, appreciate you coming on, Ryan, and being here today and sharing your story with everybody. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, or there's someone in your life that you think could benefit from learning about Ryan's story, I would encourage you to send him a text or shoot him the link to the podcast and have them check it out. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Single Man Podcast. If someone you know would benefit from this week's episode, I'd love for you to text them the link and invite them to listen. You never know how a simple invitation could change someone's life. We'll be back next Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a new episode. Until then, check out the video version of the podcast on YouTube, and you can engage with us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.